We are coming for you. There are thousands of angel moms that we're not going to just sit by. We're tired of burying our children.
That's a disregard for human life. Knowing that something that you sold her killed her.
But 693 people died due to fentanyl.
Those distributing deadly fentanyl are held accountable.
I lost my daughter to the fentanyl poisoning in 2019.
When you're dealing drugs, and you have to remember who you're harming. Even a drug dealer has a mother, relatives, people they care about, and would you want the same done to yours? As a chief of police, our job is to make sure our officers go out and arrest you, but you're not afraid of that. So look down into your heart and think about the damage you're doing to a bunch of families, because it's not just the person who uses your drugs, it's everyone else that's associated with them. And if you do have a heart, think about what you're doing to others.
Hi, my name is Rachel Carlisle, and I am here to share my daughter's story on Bonded by Trauma. And I am a mother to an angel, and my angel's name is Mariah Rachel Earp, and she will forever be 27. And she passed away on May 14th of 2020 due to a fentanyl poisoning. Fentanyl, the fentanyl that is being put into so many different drugs right now is actually illicit fentanyl. So it is completely different than the fentanyl that is in our hospitals that are being monitored. So that I just want to put that out there. And, you know, there are reasons for medicated as far as for fentanyl in hospitals with anesthesia and for people, paraplegics, cancer patients. Illicit fentanyl is being put into all of our drugs right now. It does come from China, and then it comes from China into Mexico, into the cartels, and the cartels, it comes in liquid form. And so from there, once the Mexican cartels get it, first of all, it's very cheap. It is odorless, and obviously it is, you really can't, you can't tell the difference. You can't notice it. And so they're putting it into, whether it be meth, whether it be crack, coke, weed, all of the pills, and they're not measuring it at all, because all it takes is just a tiny little speck. And actually it is a speck on the nose of Lincoln on a penny. That is the small amount that it takes to kill a person. And they're not measuring it. So they make it look as if it is any type of anything of a pill, because they're creating these fake pills. And when they're creating this, they're creating them in, you know, basements and bathtubs, and then they just are selling them out there, and people are getting them, and you really cannot tell the difference. If, you know, there could be people that are saying, oh no, I can tell that. No, you can't. You can't. The DEA has got so many different pills that they've already confiscated, and they show pictures, and you can't tell the difference. And these kids are very vulnerable, and they believe that they're, you know, they can trust whoever's given it to them. And sadly, I mean, there are children who have passed away from just even splitting a pill. You know, they've split a pill, and a friend has taken one, and then they took the other half, and one child woke up and the other child did not, because the way that they're not measuring it, and they're not, you know, making sure it's all going through. So it's just sitting in the spot, and it's killing off our loved ones. And it's killing thousands and thousands of people, young and old. And it is the #1 killer right now between the ages of 13 to, I believe, 46 years of age. It's the #1 killer. Well, Mariah was my second child. So she was the middle child. She was the second girl. She was born March 7th, 1993. From the moment that she was born, she was actually a very quiet little girl, quiet baby. She loved to sleep, and that continued on through her adulthood. She was always very quiet, very shy. Her older sister always talked for her. So it was quite interesting because she never gave her opinion. It was always her sister's opinion. But she loved her dolls. She loved to play, but she was always the one that was always in the shadows. And then as time went on, I would have to say probably in about 8th grade, she came out of her shell. And all of a sudden it was like she found her voice. And I have a little baby crying. So can you give me 1 second? She found her voice in 8th grade. And she honestly was very popular as far as, I mean, she had so many friends, and, she went through all the stages, that every teenage girl goes through. Once she got into high school, excuse you, sir, she got very much into art. And then she did cross country, she did softball. She was in some different clubs in school. She was just like anybody else's daughter, just like any other girl. She attended all the dances, she attended all the football games, and she was very well liked. She never gave me a problem. She was my one kid that never, ever gave me a problem. My oldest one, I will tell you, she's a little spicy pepper. Ooh, kept me on my toes. But Mariah was just always such a good, loving girl. She had a huge heart. She loved all animals. And at one time, I can tell you, I had ducks, I had rats, I had snakes, I had dogs and cats. Like, she would hide all these animals in her closet because I love animals, but I don't need to deal with them. So, but Mariah would like hide them all, and I would like hear noises, and she'd be like, "Oh no, it's nothing. It's probably outside." And so, yes, I would always find animals that she had brought in. She worked on a farm, so she could help take care of horses. But her art, she was amazing, and we had absolutely no idea how amazing she was. And she actually won several awards. And she was actually, she got into the Chicago Art Academy. And sadly, though, she did not attend. She had lost her grandmother, and that was her best friend. And she slowly started declining with depression. And it was kind of something she obviously never dealt with the loss of her granny. So, and it just, she changed a little bit, she was very sad. So she did not end up attending. And when she graduated from high school, she, fell in love, and she started her family.
How many kids she have?
She has 3 children, 2 boys and a girl.
That day that your whole world flipped upside down, what was it that happened?
It was May 14th of 2020. I got a phone call early in the morning, and she'd actually got pulled over, and she called from her phone. I thought it was her, but it was a police officer. He had pulled her over, and she had got pulled over because her registration was expired, but that was because of COVID. So I explained to him, I apologize because the car was actually in my name. And so we talked on the phone, and he just said, well, I'm going to go ahead. Do you give permission for her to have a licensed driver drive the vehicle? And I said, yes. I assumed somebody was with her. And we hung up the phone, and I didn't hear anything from her, which I thought was a little odd. So I called her at 2:02. And she answered. She was very winded. And she sounded very irritated. And I asked her, why did she sound that way? And she said, well, I'm walking and it's cold. And I said, what do you mean you're walking? Why are you cold? And she said, well, I couldn't find anyone to help me. So I parked the car and I'm walking. And I said, what do you mean? Like, I thought somebody was with you, and why didn't you call me to tell me, that nobody was there? I mean, now, mind you, this is 2:00 in the morning during COVID shutdown. Nothing is open. So it is, and she was not in the best of neighborhoods. And she just said, well, I didn't have anybody. And she said, but I'm almost where I need to be. I'm walking to somebody that lives close by. And so I, of course, lectured her and just, kind of told her, why didn't you just stay home? Because during these times, the last couple of months, I was starting to get more phone calls of where after work she wasn't really going home anymore, or she would be sleeping outside of the house of where she was living, and because the door would be locked or whatever. And so I was getting these phone calls, and so I lectured her and I said, you should have just stayed home. Why didn't you just stay home? And she said, I'll be fine. And I asked her again, I said, are you okay? And she said, I'm not okay, but I will be. I'll figure it out. I don't know why I believed it. I guess Mariah was always so good of not making me worry, because again, like I had mentioned previously, she was my child that never gave me a problem. And we were very, very close, me and Mariah. I'm close with all of my children, but with Mariah, it was just different. It was just very different. She was my best friend, and I do believe I was her best friend. At least that's what she would always write and tell me. So I could hear that she approached, and I, said, what, we're going to talk about this in the morning. And I am really tired of this, and I hung up. And I went ahead and I fell asleep. And I remember waking up about 2:45 in the morning. The reason I know that is because when I woke up, I, looked at my phone to see the time, and I felt I just felt a really icky sensation just come all over me. It was very ugly. It was very troubling. And I said a little prayer and I fell back asleep and just tossed and turned. And then after 4:00 in the morning, I got a phone call. And that phone call was from somebody that she was with, the father of her children. And he, was telling me that he was screaming that Mariah was dead. She was blue. And I said, I don't understand. What are you talking about? And that's when I noticed that I had some messages. And so I clicked on there and I noticed they were from Mariah. So I was like, you know what, you're tricking me, because again, like I had said, she hadn't been coming home after work many times within the last couple of months. So I thought maybe it was just a little trick, to try to find out where she was or whatever. So I hung up because I was like, oh, I don't want to stir the pot here. So I hung up. I looked on my phone and she had left several messages, and they were from 2:22 in the morning. So I instantly started calling her to see what was happening. And I called and called. It just rang and rang. So then I Facebook called her because I'm like, okay, what's happening? And so then I called back the individual and I said, she's not answering. I don't know what do you mean? And something just told me like instantly of what I remember experiencing at 2:45. And I still didn't believe him. He said, well, she can't answer. She's gone. I'm trying to tell you. And they said, no. I said, well, then let me talk to a police officer, because I'm thinking, okay, I can't believe this. I was in denial, and no police officer would speak to me at all. They literally said no. I could hear somebody. I didn't know who it was. I just heard somebody say no. then I had got a phone, like a really mysterious phone call, and it had said to come to that address, and they hung up. And I was like, what is going on? You know, I'm like, is this like, so I grabbed my keys and I was going to go, and I heard like something just say stop. And I realized I had my grandson, her son had spent the night that night. Out of all the nights, he spent the night that night. And I thought, oh my God, I can't take him there, because if it is true, he could witness all of this scary stuff, right? And so, but I was still in denial. I was like, no, there's no way. And so I called 911, and I told them about the phone calls that I had gotten. And I said, can somebody please go and do a check? Or can you tell me if this address, like somebody please tell me. And I didn't get no phone call back. But I ended up getting a phone call from the coroner, Lake County coroner, asking me if I was Rachel Carlisle, if I was the mother of Mariah Earp, and if he could please swing by. And I instantly knew. And when he came, I had to identify her belongings, and he handed me her empty purse, her ID, and her cell phone. And I asked him, you know, what happened? And he told me, well, it looks as if it was, you know, an overdose. And I was like, what do you mean? That makes no sense. And he left. I made all the phone calls. And later that morning, as I was sitting there with my children, and we were all just like, how can this be? It makes no sense. Because you see, Mariah had no history of addiction. She truly didn't. I had started kind of thinking something was off within those couple of her last months, but every time I would see her, they right away would go out the window. But since, you know, me and my children are so close, I mean, we all group text message. We all would, you know, FaceTime each other. I mean, because we're also very close. But we noticed that Mariah was becoming more vacant from those, more absent from those conversations. And we would even be like, Mariah, you know, we would even call her, you know, to join in. And, you know, she would decline them. And we all were just like, what's going on? And she had started kind of hanging out with a couple people that we were just kind of like, but that was Mariah. Mariah was the person who loved to fix people. You know, she always saw the good in everybody. And so that was just Mariah. So I personally didn't think anything wrong of it, because that was just Mariah. So as we're sitting there that morning, we noticed that we couldn't unlock her phone. Either it was with her finger or with the password. And of course, we were like, we don't know how we are going to be able to do this. My grandson came out of the room, and I had forgotten he was, you know, it was still very early and he was sleeping. And of course, he must have heard from all the screams and cries, you know, he must have heard. And he came in, and we just heard his little voice say, I know mommy's password. And, you know, we all looked at him, and he said, well, mommy always said that if I can't feel comfortable telling mommy the secrets, and mommy said that her password was big secret, I could always tell grandma the secrets. And, you know, I said, yeah, buddy, of course, you could always talk to grandma and tell me. And he said, well, then I can tell you mommy's password. And he knew her 6-digit password. And that's how we were able to get in her phone. And that is how I started looking through things. I took the next week after her passing. You know, I still had so many questions, and I was still trying to figure out, you know, because none of it made sense. But I knew I had to focus on having a service for her and burying her. And once those were completed, I knew then I was going to do what I had to do to get the answers. So I completed those things, and I rolled up my sleeves, and I called the police station asking, you know, what happened? You know, I needed a case number, and nobody would return my calls. And I was so frustrated. So I took it upon myself to go and get every police report there was. I got the 911 call log. I got the paramedic report. I did every report there was possible. And I knew I had to wait for the toxicology and the autopsy report. And it was ready in 6 weeks. And once I had that, and I had looked through her phone and I had seen so many things, I had everything that I needed. And I knew then that it was fentanyl. And what I did discover in her phone was that she had been very, very depressed. Her mental health was just, she was struggling, and she was being mentally and verbally abused for so many years, day in and day out. And that year of 2020, she literally checked out, and she got tired of fighting the fight, of just having to explain herself and, all of it. And that was why she stopped, coming home right away after work, because she figured, well, the kids are sleeping and I don't want to be berated. I don't want to deal with it. I don't, for any of it. And she started self-medicating herself. Now, she had been prescribed in the past, and, for her depression and for her anxiety. And I knew those things, but she no longer was seeing the doctor because she didn't have insurance. And so she was starting to, get scripts from other people, or their medication. And she just started, really going down a downward spiral. And ultimately that night she took a pill and it killed her. She took a Xanax. And now anybody who, takes a Xanax, you don't die from a Xanax. My daughter did, because of the fact it was not a Xanax. It was just filled with illicit fentanyl. And that is her story. And now I tell her story. And I just hope and pray that there's people that are reading this today or watching this, that pills or any drugs are not going to take away your pain, your sorrow. And that's her story.
I have Rachel obviously said that you were gathering up all these types of reports. Ultimately, did they end up finding someone that was responsible for issuing out these drugs? Are you in the process of going to court? Is there anything going on?
There is an investigation, so I've been told. That is one of the reasons that I started becoming very, very vocal, especially on TikTok. TikTok is a very huge platform, I have found out, and so I have chosen to go on there to really. I know who it is, and I have sat there. I don't call this person out by name. This person are people. They know who they are. And I am fighting very hard for accountability, for justice, which I don't, the word justice is very hard, because real justice would be where my daughter was here, right? To celebrate in that, but she's not here, and I want accountability. So I have noticed, because of thousands of other parents just like me, where there is no investigations. And when you're asking the police, for answers of what has happened to our loved ones, and they don't give you any, I was told to me from a sergeant that from the Hammond Police Department, ma'am, do you know how many junkies we deal with on a daily basis? Those were his exact words to me.
And this is coming from who?
A sergeant from the Hammond Police Department. When I was asking, I need details of what happened to my child. I need to know what happened. And that's when I discovered wow, the stigma that is there. And I also discovered there was no investigation that was being done. Nobody was even assigned to her case. And the sad part of all of this was the fact that that officer who pulled her over that night and had her walk was the first responding officer on the scene. And he had talked to me earlier in the evening. He had no problem calling me and talking to me then and asking me questions, but he couldn't call me to tell me that he was there and my child was gone. And when I asked to speak, he refused. And I don't know if what the protocol is. I don't know all of that, but my God, no investigation at all. And I'm not the only one. I mean, here in I live in Lake County, Indiana. I live in Indiana, and I live in Highland, Indiana, and our county is Lake County. We are the second highest in fentanyl poisonings here in this state. We are the second, and they have only prosecuted 3 cases so far. That's it. 3 cases in Lake County. That's crazy to me. So that was going back to why I started, on TikTok, because I knew TikTok, I was setting myself up for, I knew people could be very brutal, with the stigma, but I didn't care. I needed to do something. I needed to speak out. It was my way, and it's been my way of grieving out loud. That is what I call it, because I have to talk about it. I have to talk about it. I have to talk about the injustices that are being done all over our country, of what is happening to all of these kids and our loved ones. I mean, and there's no investigation. There's no accountability whatsoever. And matter of fact, even with her autopsy, I had some questions, my daughter had several tattoos all over. She had piercings on her face, and her autopsy report stated there was no piercings, no tattoos. And so when I called and I said, is this the right person? They said, oh, you know what? That was just a mistake on our end. Excuse me? A mistake? Well, what else was there of a mistake? So the accountability needs to be there. The investigations need to be there. We all deserve answers, because again, the stigma that goes even with our police department, oh, they're just another statistic. But you don't even know who these kids are. You don't know. And so I thought, nope, I'm not going to be quiet. And if I have to go stand outside the courthouse, if I got to go stand outside the police station, which I have held rallies here in Lake County. We also participated in a parade this year, which was very scary. It was our turn to go next into the parade. And we all looked at each other and were like, should we not do this? Because, parades are fun and all of that. And here we are going, and it's almost like gloom and doom, right? But we wanted to get conversation started, and we wanted to share about our children. And we want also for the police department and prosecutors, hey, we're a group of parents here. We want accountability. We want answers. We want investigations. We want people to be held responsible. There's a problem here. And we actually ended up getting amazing feedback from it. And I'm not going to stop. And I'm going to continue being as vocal and as loud as I have to be until something is done. And it's not just about my daughter's case. It's about so many cases here, especially in Lake County, but throughout the whole entire country. If that answers your question, I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. You absolutely did. Participating in these rallies, going to these events and making your voices heard. How does it feel being amongst crowds of other people who can somewhat understand you? They can somewhat out of so many millions of people in the world that don't understand you, these are the selected few, the unfortunate selected few that can understand you. How does it feel being amongst crowds like that?
Well, to be honest, like I said, we were scared. We weren't sure how people were going to react, because people can be very cruel. And it was a very long parade. We didn't realize how many miles it was, but it's one of the biggest ones here in Lake County. And so we got people stood up, they applauded us, people cried. as we were walking, people would say their loved one or their friend's names out loud as well. They would say, "We have somebody," or they would say how sorry they were. We got several messages afterwards saying thank you, because there was parents who their kids would turn and be like, "What's fentanyl?" And so it started conversations. So it was very overwhelming. When we've held rallies, people have stopped their vehicles, got out, and have come and shared either their about their struggle and addiction and how they're in recovery, or how they're still struggling and they want to get help. People have gotten down and they have mentioned their loved one, their friend, any, just so many stories. I also did 3 billboards here in the region in Lake County, Indiana, and it had Mariah's face on it, her name, Drug Induced Homicide Foundation, because again, I wanted people to see her face, know her name, and to know about fentanyl. And also, hey, drug induced homicide, we're not letting it go. There's going to be some type of something, and even through that, I was able to meet other angel moms that are from here, that they thought they were the only ones and they didn't have anybody to talk to. And I have made, oh my gosh, these mamas have got me for life. They're now my sisters. And so it's overwhelming at times, but it's also such a relief. And to be able to talk about my daughter, I need to talk about her. Anybody who has lost somebody can understand where I'm coming from on that. People are afraid to have those conversations, or, to be afraid to mention your child's name because, will that bring sadness? It's the opposite. It's a form of us being able to also heal in our grief by talking about our angels.
That's another thing, grief. I'm sure those following weeks, months must have been hell. It must have been craziness. I can only imagine. How does one grieve? How does one get through this? Is it through family members being there to support? Is there actually groups? Is there actually resources available, people you can talk to? How does one get through a tragedy like this?
You're right. The days for a good 2 weeks solid, I remember if I sat down, I was just constantly in a rocking, motion, constantly rocking as if I was in a rocking chair. If I was standing, I was pacing the floor back and forth. It could be in one spot, and I would just pace back and forth with my hands just fidgeting, and then as the weeks went by, my focus turned into trying to find the answers, but it was all such a fog. The first year is a huge fog, and nobody grieves the same. Everybody grieves very differently, and how somebody chooses of how their path of dealing with their grief is all very different as well. For me, I chose to grieve out loud from the very beginning. I chose to talk about it through my Facebook. I would just pour all of my emotions and what I was feeling and going through. I would just write away. I would just write huge long posts. Now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was like a book. And I had to openly talk about it. Now, I will tell you, it is the loneliest path that you can absolutely walk. So lonely, because a lot of times you don't have the support from your family because they feel what's best for you is to move on, to not talk about it, because it's just causing you pain. You're still living in it. You're engulfing yourself in it. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't laying on the floor with, Mariah's pictures all around me. No, that wasn't what I was doing. I mean, I was, I wanted to stay in bed, but I knew that wasn't an option. I had to get up. I had to still do things. I was newly married. I had just got married just a few months before Mariah passed away. So my poor husband, that's not what he signed up for, and that woman that I used to be, she died. the day my daughter died. I am no longer the same person. I have learned to smile again. I have learned, that it's okay to have fun. It's okay to live and breathe and be happy. It's always on my mind. From the moment I open my eyes, I remember, it's like, okay, it wasn't a dream. It's reality. When I go to sleep, I still include my daughter in my prayers. Every night, I go down the list. She's still there. She'll always be there. And as far as, I think that's why it's so important to really engulf yourself and make connections with other angel parents so you can talk and you have a bond, no matter how you've lost your child, because we've all lost our child. As far as groups, there are many groups through social media, and I'm sorry, someone's wanting to talk too. Share his story. He's being very loud. There are a lot on social media, and they've actually been my lifelines. And as far as going out and getting the counseling, it's a little tough. I will be honest with you, because a lot of people will say, well, here's some medication. Well, for me, I'm not taking away from it, but for me, I need to feel it all. I need to deal with it. I don't, this is, that for, in my mind, in my heart, I'm like, that's what also contributed to my daughter, so it's like it's a tough thing for me, and when I have talked to some people through like grief counselors, I've asked, well, have you lost a child? Because it's like, well, you don't understand, but so it's tough, man. It's tough. It's lonely. And I've now actually started participating in what I call Truth Talk Fridays on TikTok. We go on live, and it's a bunch of us mamas, and we just talk about life, talk about our angels, talk about our grief, and it's helped me a lot. So yeah.
That you found a way to be able to express yourself publicly, and hopefully maybe someone that's out there that's listening maybe might find this way to be helpful for them.
Yes.
If you had a message for somebody out there who's actively dealing fentanyl, where he's actively cutting up drugs, just trying to make money, trying to get their hustle on, or for whatever reason, they might not be seeing this side. However, if you can speak some words to somebody who's involved in that activity, what would you tell them?
First, I want to say, we're coming for you. We are coming for you. There are thousands of angel moms that we're not going to just sit by. We're tired of burying our children. We are tired of having to say their names. We are tired of our children going down paths because of their addiction. You are destroying families. You are helping to take away parents from their children. You're helping in taking away money to feed children. And you stole and robbed. You helped in taking away the most beautiful life there was in my life. And my family will forever now will never be the same. There's so much more that I wish I can say, and I pray that one day you don't know what that feels like, because I wouldn't even wish this upon anyone that's even dealing to have to lose their child. I wouldn't wish it upon my biggest enemy, because it's a pain. And that loss is huge. I have a new grandson who will never know who his Aunt Mariah was. I've got a daughter now who lost her soulmate, her sister. There's 3 little children that no longer will have their mommy tuck them into bed. The list goes on and on. And that's what I would have to say. I would have to say.
So much for taking the time out of your day and sharing your story and sharing your daughter's story. This is real. This epidemic is real. A lot of people are losing their lives. People are being affected every single day. Every single day. So it is our obligation to make sure that we spread awareness. With that being said, Rachel, is there anything else that you would?
I just want to say, if anyone is watching and they are struggling with whatever they may be struggling with, to please, you don't have to suffer in silence. You don't. And if you reach out to someone and that person doesn't take you serious, you keep on reaching out to others until somebody listens. There's not enough things in this world that you'll be able to take to, like I've said before, to try to soothe your pain and your traumas and all of those things. Reach out to people, especially now through social media. I mean, there's a huge, huge, huge world of people that have experienced in so many different traumas, and we're all bonded by that. I mean, we truly are. And there are people in this world who do care about you, strangers that do care about other strangers. And if your own family doesn't want to help, then you reach out to those strangers that do want to help. Because this life is truly a beautiful life to live. It truly can be. And I send so many people so much love because this world needs so much more love and compassion. So yeah.